We used to.
Okay, for those joining, this is the Town of Fairfield's Affordable Housing Committee. This is a special meeting. We're meeting in Old Town Hall, second floor conference room, as well as via Zoom. Today is February 7th, 2024. We have a quorum this evening, so 7 o'clock. Call to order and turn things over to our chair, Herb Limecooler. If you want to make a round of introductions, we do have some guests.
Absolutely. We're delighted to have you, Renee and Steve with us. We really appreciate that very much. And so we'll just quickly introduce ourselves. I'm Herb Limecooler, current chair of the committee.
Jackie Page, new member.
Gretchen Gertner, recording secretary.
Steve Grothwall, the vice chair. And I know Renee, but I don't know if I met Steve or not.
Nice to meet you. I lived in Fairfield for 14 years, so I probably saw you somewhere around Firehouse Deli or downtown or something at some point.
I'm Bob Ellinger.
We do have a few members missing, but we wanted to get started, and we know we do appreciate you joining us tonight. Know your time is valuable, but a lot of, one of the things the Affordable Housing Committee is doing is meeting with housing providers and advocates to learn more about the work that they're doing for affordable housing and looking at opportunities with which to partner if there's those opportunities that come up. And Steve, your letter was most timely, so I said, well, we haven't talked in a while, so let's have you and Renee on and learn more about your good work with the Connecticut Housing Partners. And so I'll let you guys introduce yourselves and go from there.
Okay, sounds terrific. I'm Renee Dovis. I'm the CEO of Connecticut Housing Partners, and
I'm Steve Gulick. I'm vice president of real estate.
so we're one of the largest nonprofit affordable housing developers in Fairfield County. We're starting to migrate outside of Fairfield County because the need is so great. And we have our own in-house real estate development team. So we don't rely on consultants or anything like that. And then the Department of Housing has tapped us to try to put as many projects in the pipeline as possible. And so they've provided us some funding to do the pre-development work, because as you know, it costs about $350,000 to get a project into the application process. So we have a very strong relationship with the Department of Housing and Connecticut Housing Finance Authority. And our pipeline is very robust, and we are very committed to the mission of affordable housing. That's what we do. Not only do we build affordable housing, we actually manage our own assets. And then we also have another arm in which we help other nonprofits to be able to develop some affordable housing. So we provide some consulting work. We also do compliance work for other nonprofits. We also provide property management services to other nonprofits that are in the area that are unable to provide that service for themselves. So we're end to end. So we have our nonprofit, which is where we develop affordable housing and then manage our own assets. We have another company where we manage assets for other people. And then we also have a real estate company where we do traditional buy and sell of real estate transactions. And so that's how we're able to engage our staff so that they can become real estate salespersons and be able to add to their credentialing and also improve to provide additional income for themselves and influence their sphere of influence so that we're able to move into that reality for real estate development. So we pretty much do everything. We're very experienced when it comes to the state MOD program, HUD programs, LIHTC programs, where we have multiple properties that interface with all of these different programmatic avenues. So you can imagine we spend a lot of time training our staff because our staff need to understand all of these different issues. And so, you know, we're very advanced when it comes to the compliance arena, and we really interface with our investors in a very robust way when it comes to a tax credit portfolio. And we have an excellent reputation when it comes to our investors and also the state of Connecticut.
Thank you. You guys want to just spitball some questions out, or? Steve, did you have anything to add before we start throwing some questions your way?
You pretty much covered it all. I would like to say though that we also have, she mentioned we have property management staff, we have a maintenance staff all in-house, and we do compliance monitoring and property management for for-profit developers that have affordable units within their market rate properties as well. Yeah, so I sent you that letter, Mark, because we are recognizing that, you know, 830G is a problem for the municipalities, you know, and market rate developers are taking advantage of statute 830G to bypass zoning regulations, and, you know, are only required to put 30% affordable in those developments by statute, whereas our projects are, you know, 90% affordable. Sometimes we have to sprinkle a market rate unit or two in there to make the operating pro forma work. But other than that, they are deed restricted, affordable, and we're in a position, you know, where if we can find the projects, we can help municipalities get to their 10% affordable count and get on the appeals list and qualify for the appeals list much faster than a market rate developer could.
What
Yeah.
what kind of projects, I mean, you typically look for? What kind of projects are constitute your sweet spot?
So typically, we build about our sweet spot is 50 units in a development. And what we try to do when we enter a community is that we want to be able to blend in. We have very high standards when it comes to the development of our product. So if you drive by any of our developments, you can't tell it's affordable housing. And that's by design, because, you know, my philosophy is that it's not housing a last resort like a housing authority, it's housing of choice. And so our wait lists are very robust. People want to move into our developments. We take care of our developments, and we don't allow deferred maintenance to creep in so that it starts looking like it's run down after 10 years or anything like that. We have, you know, say for instance, where our headquarters are in Trumbull, it's a senior housing development, and you drive by it, you don't know that it's affordable housing. You have no idea, because we maintain our properties. We're very proud of the assets that we hold. All of our employees are very dedicated to the organization, and our maintenance staff, they're our frontline warriors. So they're the ones that are going in. They're very proud. They want to take care of the properties. And so what we do when we go into other communities, such as we have assets in Wilton, we had an asset in Fairfield, you know, Stanford, Trumbull. These are communities that typically would, if I can say, NIMBYism would kick in, so that they wouldn't want us to participate. But we bring them to our properties so they can see and imagine what could be in their community. And so we purchased a piece of land in Monroe. We were able to actually put our project into their affordability plan. And so we're going to be building some senior housing in Monroe, and we would love to build some additional housing for Fairfield County. We know the pressure that the state is putting on all the municipalities. We also see all of the blogs and all of the writings that residents put forth, because they get very frustrated, and we know that the municipality is frustrated as well, because a market rate developer comes in, exercises 830G, and kind of jams this project into a place that you may not necessarily want it to be there. We don't operate like that. We want to partner with the community and the municipality We want to be able to erect housing that works for you, and we're not going to be an adversary. We want to partner with you and work with you and help you meet your goals.
You said the majority of your units are affordable. What affordability do you typically target as part of your developments? Is there a range of affordability? What does that look like typically?
Yes, so we actually really capitalize on the LIHTC program, so that there's typically tiers in that. It's usually 25 to 50% tier, 50 to 60%, and 60% tiers. So there's multiple tiers in there. So it's basically 60% AMI and below. That's what the funding is utilized towards that. We are looking for ways to be able to capitalize on entering into workforce housing. We have contracts with about 8 different market rate developers that have workforce housing in their developments. It's only 10%, and they're located in Stamford and Norwalk. And we do all the compliance work for them because they just don't want to be bothered with it. And so CHFA did a study at the end of 2023. And a year before that, in 2022, they said that we had a shortage of 89,000 units. In 2023, it's crept up to 92,500 units. So it's moving into the middle class. So above 60% AMI, 80%, 90%, 100%, people can't find housing that is affordable. The governor is beginning to recognize this because he's trying to attract business into the state of Connecticut. And the first question he's asked, where are my workers going to live? So he has been infusing a tremendous amount of money into affordable housing. So the affordable housing definition, I think, is going to expand from 60% to 80, 90, 100%. And right now, the state is geared up to fund 60% AMI and below. And Steve and I are working with strategies to figure out how we're going to provide workforce housing. And so we're really thinking about that. And the state is trying to figure it out. They haven't done it yet, but we'll see, what can be done. But it's really a crisis. And I think all of us know someone who's just graduated from college, a parent, a relative who's unable to live in their own unit because they can't afford it. The price of rental housing to buy your own home with interest rates, it has been staggering. And it's really very challenging. And I get calls daily, people calling me saying, I am desperate. I'm getting ready to lose my housing and I have no place to go. So it's really going to impact a homeless crisis. And even though we participate in the Coordinated Access Network, which is the CAN, where people are in the homeless community, and then they connect with us to be able to move into one of our units, it's really staggering, and we can't build the units fast enough. We went to a conference with the Department of Housing. They said in the next 3 years, they have 65 units in their pipeline. But if we have a shortage of 92,500 units, that's not enough. So we have to do more, and we all have to do more.
Well, I was monopolizing the question, so I'll let you guys say.
Renee, have you guys done any for sale housing?
I didn't hear the question. Say that again.
Done any for sale housing, condominiums or single family homes?
So historically, we have done that work when there was funding available to do that. We have actually built about 275 units of condos, which are for first-time home buyers. But the funding is not there any longer to do that. What the state of Connecticut is doing, and they're very proud of this program, and I don't blame them for being proud, is that they are providing up to $50,000 to help first-time home buyers buy their own home, single-family home. And so when I spoke to the commissioner, she told me that the average sale price of a home was $250,000. she'll do that all day long. Because as you know, when you're building affordable housing, it costs more than $250,000 a unit. So that's been a very successful program. Actually, one of my board members' child actually participated in that program and was able to buy a home. So so that's their direction that they're moving in. So there really isn't any funding for, say, developers like ourselves to be able to build like a condo complex to be for first-time home buyers.
Can you give us some addresses of some of your 90% affordable housing units that are finished
Just looking for projects that you've worked on.
It's on the website. Bill.
on the website? Okay.
Yeah, so if you go to our website, cthousingpartners.org, we have assets in Stanford, Wilton, Bridgeport, Trumbull. We had an asset in Fairfield, but I actually worked with Carol Martin. It was a 10-unit senior housing, and I actually gave it to her. So she's managing that asset now. And so, you know, and we have land in Monroe that we're getting ready to develop some affordable housing there. We're actually been approved through the Planning and Zoning Department. And so we're working with the state we have about 80% of the capital stack built. We're asking the state to fill in the 20% so that we can break ground on that as well. We're also doing some major rehabs. When we build an asset, you know, the state says it has to be deed restricted for 40 years. We don't let go of it. We don't turn it to market. So we have a 69-unit family development in Stanford that we're getting ready to break ground on a tax credit deal. And we have another one in Bridgeport, which is 44 units. So when we hold our assets, we hold them for long term.
I think Jackie's question was, can she tell which units are 90% affordable, wasn't it?
Yeah, was interested in the 90% affordable units. I didn't know if that was on the website.
You mean
There-
workforce?
Which ones? The address?
Workforce,
The majority of your developments are overwhelmingly affordable. That's you work in the arena where most of the units in your developments are affordable.
I think the answer is
Correct? That's what I was.
That is correct. So most of our developments are 100% affordable.
And like all of them are mostly affordable. That's the point of it.
right? We don't have one project that's,
No, I
That's-
just,
Yeah.
I wanted to go by and look at them.
Norwalk has a bunch.
Yeah.
Norwalk.
Yeah.
websites.
Well, we're gonna have some tours. How's that?
Uh,
Listen, we have done that before. So when we were
Happy to do that.
talking about building affordable housing in Monroe, they were concerned, right? Because, you know, the first selectman is worried about getting reelected and he's like, what does this mean? So we have brought him to our assets so they can imagine what would be in their community. We definitely will do tours. We'll definitely show you what we can do. You know, that's our mission because we believe in affordable housing. If we have any market rate units, they're very few. I know one of my projects in Bridgeport, it might have 4 market rate units out of the 44 units. We are literally 99% affordable.
That's
That's
because what informs that is your capital stack. You
Correct.
access funding sources that require a higher level of affordability in order to be competitive and to
Correct.
be eligible for that funding.
You're
correct,
absolutely-
and the projects are all mixed, you know, there isn't one project that's all 60%, they're mixed units. And it all depends on the, you know, like you said, Mark, the funding sources and what it requires to score well enough to be funded.
Mhm.
Have you looked at any properties in Fairfield in recent years for potential development?
Yes, we have.
Is there anything any way we can help you, I guess, in terms of pointing you toward properties that meet your criteria, your specifications?
Connecticut Housing Partners had responded to our RFQ for Greenfield Street along with Habitat. We selected Habitat because we were focused more on affordable home
They
ownership.
know that we have an affordable housing trust
They
fund.
do.
Yes.
They
okay.
do. So,
Mhm.
Guys, I think in terms of opportunities to work together, what would you suggest the committee be focused on? I mean, clearly, from my perspective, one of the things that we found as an issue is just identifying land and making it available. If it's control, if it's under our control, then making it available to developers like yourselves. But what would you suggest in terms of the committee be focused on, from what would be most helpful from your standpoint, for this committee to be working on?
We have worked in several municipalities. We know land is a precious resource for municipalities. And if they want to lease that land to us instead of selling it to us, say for 98 years or whatever the term is, then we can build affordable housing and help the municipality meet their goals. Then say, in the future, if that development no longer exists, the municipality still has that precious resource of land in their coffers. So, we don't always have to buy the land. We can work with the municipality. Either we purchase it from you, we can lease it from you, whatever, we're very flexible. Whatever you need from us, we can help that. Because by putting affordable housing into your community, you're enriching your community, you're providing that diversity. Those people who service your residents in the community are likely going to be those people that are living in the development that we're providing.
The other thing you might want to mention is that we also have a very robust screening process of all our residents. So, they have to qualify to get into the units. It's not just letting anybody in the door. So it's important for our communities, our buildings, that, we have people in there that are not troublemakers, don't have history of causing trouble, and are going to live and cooperate in a peaceful and productive environment.
Right. You wouldn't think that a teacher would need to have access to affordable housing. So say, for instance, in one of our developments in Stanford, we have a teacher who's earning about $80,000 a year, but, market rate housing is out of her reach. So she lives with us. And, you need to understand who we're housing. We're housing those folks that are serving your community, the teachers, the pharmacists, the CNA, the policemen. Those are the people that are living with us. I think a lot of times when you say the word affordable housing, everyone thinks about a housing authority. And this is what I say before, we're housing a choice. Nobody has to live with us. They live with us because they like the property, they like the location. It makes them be able to work closer or live closer to where they work, which is really important. And, we've met that NIMBYism, not in my backyard, where, some communities don't care that somebody has to commute an hour to be able to come into the community, like a teacher, right? They don't care that the teacher has to commute an hour to come in to teach their children, but they don't want them living there. We've experienced that. And, we're really trying to fight hard against that. And it's a long educational process. That's all I can say.
We identify with that.
Yeah.
Sally. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Renee and Steve, very much for doing this. You're welcome to stick around, but I know you probably have many other things that you want to attend to as well. But we do appreciate you spending a few minutes with us to explain more about Connecticut Housing Partners and look for opportunities where we can work together in the future.
We would love
Great.
that.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, we would love it.
Thank you.
Honestly. Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks
Nice
very
to
much.
meet you.
Renee, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
The responded both for Greenfield and for,
No, they responded to Greenfield, and I think with, on the Navy housing site, we made it pretty clear that we were interested in maintaining home ownership opportunities there. That was our focus, and based on, again, what Steve and Renee described in terms of funding sources that they use for development, they decided not to respond in that case. So I think, you know, again, we would work with Mutual Housing to develop the Greenfield Street property, and, you know, they're the successor to that organization in a way. So, but it's, I think, again, our focus in terms of finding development sites that eventually work. We've kind of gone through the inventory of town assets numerous times. There are no obvious candidates there without, you know, but there are certainly maybe some opportunities that come up during the course. You know, we've looked at sites in town that might work for this group and others. But
maybe on top of Operation Hope when they build on Nexus.
yeah, that site's challenged, so we're still moving ahead because I don't know too many other options for Operation Hope. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think our next item is the minutes of the last meeting, the January 10th meeting.
Well, can I just, I guess for a second, so Renee and Steve are, you said you're pretty proud of how they maintain their assets, and these developments, unlike like an 830G, they don't have a lot of money floating around to do maintenance. And those projects, theirs that I've seen, are in good shape, and it's hard to do. You got to give them credit for that, and
I think the difference is whether it's Connecticut Housing Partners or Habitat or any other nonprofit housing developer, they're in it for the long haul. They're creating the majority of units that they're developing are affordable in some fashion or another, and they're essentially affordable in perpetuity, not for a limited term. So you don't have to worry about them in the market at some point. So again, if we're looking for ways in which we could maximize, you know, our limited resources through the Housing Trust Fund, you know, land has been a key issue. Every housing developer I've talked to, it's really, you know, finding that property. If you can provide site control and then go through a process by which you select a developer to partner with. It kind of depends on what your objectives are, but if you're looking more, they do more rental. So again, if there's more rental housing envisioned for that site, they would be an excellent group to work with. But I'd rather, you know, my take is I'd rather take our limited dollars and put it towards acquisition of land and partner with a nonprofit housing developer than, you know, turning it over to any for-profit groups to do it, because again, their objectives are like a little different.
so you know, there's a condo in town for sale for 300,000. And
Condo unit,
condo unit, we get 2-bedroom, 2-bath.
Right.
And you know, we couldn't build a 2-bedroom, 2-bath for 300,000.
but the beauty of those things are that is our affordable starter home opportunity. So the people that will likely buy that
That's true.
will come to us and ask for down payment assistance, because there's really very little inventory in that less than $400,000 range, that we can actually utilize our down payment and closing cost assistance to help them, you know, obtain their first home in town. So, you know, I don't want to compete with a income eligible first time home buyer that might otherwise be buying that.
It wouldn't necessarily be a competition, because you could work down in love, but we should not miss the opportunity, that's all. So,
Yeah, it's just clarifying, you know, edify me on why. That would be a first, like, why wouldn't somebody else just buy that up, given where the market is right now?
maybe they're gonna renovate it, flip it, and it'd be a 400,000 or
I mean,
450.
that's my point. Yeah. I don't necessarily think mortgage rates. I wouldn't assume it would be a first time home buyer.
Well, if you guys want to buy condo units in town, that's your choice.
It's a whole program.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
We've
talk
also
to.
got the homeowner fees to consider and how they're going to go up and where there might be assessments down. And somebody buying that,
Well, there's always challenges, Gretchen.
Yeah.
There's a limited opportunity to do a lot of flipping with condos because you have HOA stuff and,
But-
you know, what do you
So
really
the
got?
Housing Authority bought a bunch of them.
If the housing authority bought a bunch of them,
Yeah, you know. So, because again, they can't build them for that
you
price.
can't even get the housing authority to buy a 4-family unit in town, so.
Okay.
And you couldn't really use that for a land trust. 'cause condo- Right, you couldn't put a lease restriction on that. You're stuck inside of a homeowner association already.
Yeah.
Just.
Okay, anyone like to recommend approval of the? Sorry. Steve moves approval of the prior minutes.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
because I was there.
Everyone was there.
Janice, seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Next item we have is the payment in lieu of regulation amendment.
So going back through it, we had a presentation by Chris Russo and others relative to the proposed text amendment that's before the Planning and Zoning Commission related to development and plot. And I think for the most part, the proposed text amendment is very similar to language that we had proposed previously, with the exception of the formula. And so, you know, for those that have a longer memory of this issue, discussed this before, in that, you know, came up in 2018, 2019. The committee had actually taken position in support of another proposal to create a payment in lieu at the discretion of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And it was based on a formula of 320% of the area median income, which I've provided a copy of too. So this was, that was not a text amendment that this committee had offered, but rather it was offered by Tony Rizzio on behalf of his client, Glenn Tangelo, who was developing or had developed a property in Southport, Westway Road. That property was not approved. This was a copy of the letter that he submitted. The committee submitted in support of that application. And I highlighted a couple areas. And I think, you know, though, from my standpoint, those observations or findings are true today as they were then. You know, I think we had some testimony from Attorney Rizzio and Attorney Russo regarding the fact that affordable home ownership is different from rental units within these deed restricted properties. That, you know, it provides an option for the commission to consider to do a payment in lieu. But I think these were important points that we made then, that there may be situations where it is advantageous for the town to do a payment in lieu, but that those circumstances are limited, should be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, and discretion should lie with the town through its Planning and Zoning Commission. So what I was hoping we might want to do is discuss taking a similar position with regard to the proposed text amendment that's pending. I expect there'll be a public hearing on both the text amendment and the development application probably in March. But I'm not sure that it may precede our next meeting, so I wanted to at least have a conversation and see if we could coalesce around providing some comments on that proposed proposed text amendment. And again, my biggest concern is in the proposal put forth by Attorney Russo and Lizio, they were proposing that one of them based on 250% of the area median. And just doing a quick survey of other communities in Fairfield County that have similar payment in lieu options. Ridgefield provides 300% of area median based on the Danbury, which if you ran the numbers would work out to a payment in lieu of $446,400 per unit. Norwalk is 370% of the state median income. The numbers that is similar, it's around 450% or $450,000. Darien is 300% of the state median, which is $358,500. New Canaan's 300% of the state median, same number. So 250% is quite low. And I think, you know, even 320%, which we have suggested based on these numbers, again, some of these communities have looked at this issue more recently, have adjusted their numbers accordingly. You know, we may want to propose something around 350% of area median, or currently the state median income is typically higher than the area median income. So some communities that are using the state, that's a higher threshold. But that's, you know,
How much is 350%?
I didn't bring my. Of course, I left my phone up there. So,
Bob's gonna be quicker than I am. What is the area median? What is the one person?
the area median is 117.4,
117.
350% would be,
350 be just under 4?
yeah.
That's Fairfield. What's the state?
If you ran the state is 119.5. So most, in the last 10 years, this state median income has generally been higher than the
That
area
makes
median,
sense, yeah.
Bridgeport area median income.
Is that adjusted annually?
It is adjusted annually.
And I said to Mark before, I think given the fact that we're, you know, one of the highest member towns in our SMSA, higher percentage probably would make sense in our case anyway, because theoretically we should be applying our percentage to a higher base than what's typical of the Bridgeport SMSA.
Just, I did look at Stanford as well. Stanford is a little bit different. They base theirs on $1 per square foot based on the percent of gross floor area that's percentage of gross floor area that's dedicated to below market that of course is being lost through the payment in lieu. So if you ran again, I just ran this development is 45,000 square feet, 45,000 square feet. 10% of that, 4,500 times 200, $900,000 split in half, $450,000 per unit. So, you know, we're in the, I think in the ballpark, and you know, if you're in 400, 450, somewhere in that range, that's, you can actually do something with that. I don't know if you could buy the condo, but not too many other units here in town that you could buy for that.
So I thought that, and Urban, I talked about this, I thought there was 3 things that we had to have if we were going to do this. One was a formula that gave us enough money, 400,000 or whatever. Second, a formula that would increase when the median income increased, or so that it didn't just flatline and lose value. And third, that was easy to understand. You didn't have to have a PhD to go through and figure it out. And I thought that what you had presented a couple of months ago, you know, I thought that was really good. And so I like the 350% of the median. I would vote on that,
Of the state or the area?
whatever gives us the highest number.
Right now, you could also recommend that's the, you know, sometimes it says the lesser of, or you can put the greater of the two. You know, I think in most cases, a lot of the affordable language is the lesser of the two, especially if it's based on your area. But we could easily make it the other way too.
But how do we deal with the problem that Stanford had? I've been told that, you know, they've got this fee in lieu of, and they get the money, but then they have no way to spend the money.
Well, Stanford's issue is I think there are a couple things. One is, it's a very complex formula and they have a lot of things flowing into it. And I don't know that they were as focused on creating the units elsewhere, and they don't make the same distinction. Like Ridgefield is very similar to Fairfield in the sense that it applies exclusively to for sale opportunities. You don't have this option for rental properties. But Stanford, I think, covers the whole range, and I don't know if you've been reading some of the news articles, but there's a proposal pending before the Stanford board where the developer is asking them to accept a payment in lieu of creating the 45 units within the development. And there's some, some reluctance to do so. I think overall the commission seems to be, it's a pretty high number, but I guess not relative to 45 units either. So, I think the bigger issue is maybe they haven't focused as much on looking for opportunities to utilize those dollars as we have. So I feel like we've been spending money.
We'd have no trouble spending this money.
No.
Yeah. No, I think it's best if the units be at the development site, not be off-site, you know?
That's why I think, the language that we had before that, circumstances to utilize this should be limited. I think that makes a lot of sense, and they're proposing it be exclusively only for sale. So, I agree with you for the most, that's the downside to any payment in lieu is that you don't have the benefit. It's a two-step process. You don't have the benefit of those units as they're being created as part of that development. You have to then identify another opportunity to do so later. So there's going to be a delay.
Now, in terms of educating the Planning and Zoning Commission in terms of use of this tool, I mean, we're Russo Rizzio are going to do that in spades. But is it worthwhile for us to go on record as supporting the argument or the type of situation in which they might use this tool?
Again, if we were okay with just making the same points we made in 2019 and acknowledging the fact that we discussed this before and we did meet with Attorney Russo and Attorney Rizzio and heard them out, but our major objection to the language that they propose is the formula we think is too low relative to other communities nearby that have a much higher formula. And I think the facts kind of speak for themselves.
Yeah, it's not on the individual project per se, right? And they're making proposals to do it at a certain rate. I mean, there's the payment in lieu, and then there's a project. It's two separate things. And then they can educate. Wouldn't say we looked at it. I would say that it is interesting, just like and I won't dwell on it, but the median income thing's scoop because we all know that housing prices and median income are not.
Well, they've diverged, median income doesn't attract.
You're showing it over time, so it's.
Very-
I guess you keep just chasing. It's like, well, we're at 320, but it's, so now we're having to go 370. I mean, whatever you can.
Well, I think the other thing with any rate change is, and this goes both ways, is you can change them. So you just go through the same process, like we're talking about the threshold for inclusionary zoning, whether it should be 10 units or 5, or whether it should be 12% or 13%. So at some point, yeah, these things should be, I think we'll reset a little bit, but that doesn't necessarily say 10 years from now, we have to revisit the formula and say that's not really working. It's not keeping pace with the cost of housing, and we need to adjust the formula so it's 400% or 500% or whatever it
We
is.
do it any.
Yeah.
Produce a report every year anyway, so.
Yeah, Stanford, and I couldn't find, Stanford makes a reference in their dollar per square foot, which is on a sliding scale. It's so complicated. I agree with you. I'd much rather have a something that is fairly easy to explain and understand. But you really need an advanced degree with Stanford, but they have a sliding scale. And, in certain districts, it's $150 a square foot, others it's $200 a square foot. I mean, I can understand that to some degree. And then it's supposed to adjust based on COLA. So, I don't even know if the $200 is currently what they're using. I'd have to talk to Stanford, but it's just simplicity. I've always gone for some more simple.
So Mark,
Pass.
could we craft language that said something like it's 350% or some other percentage that the planning and zoning commission thinks is reasonable? And leave that language in the regulation so that if at some point they thought 350 was too high for one development, they might be able to do it at 3.
I don't think the commission would want to do that. I think for
Too
both
much
the
pressure on
developer and the commission standpoint, they want to be able to treat everyone equitably.
Yeah.
If at some point they have to adjust it because of the circumstances, that it's either too high or too low, they can go back in and use a different formula, but I don't think they want that level of discretion to say, hey, for this development, 200% is okay, and for this guy over here, it's 300% is good. So I think they would shy away from that.
I mean, I like that, but I get that. But I think that's why Richfield did and even Stanford, that you have to account that municipality, that area, it's got several different.
Well,
This goes to your policy. This
they've-
is the areas that we think makes more sense because of access to them, and whatever, and that actually, I think that should come from town planning and, some kind of coordinated. The town has to decide that, and
That's a
then.
good point too, which is.
Help shape your percentages that way, because then because it'll be, they're like, oh, you'll drive, they'll go, they'll be like, if I can get, whatever.
They're the ultimate arbiters, so they can decide their own formula and come up with their own regimen if they so choose. I just think, we should weigh in on this proposal, and certainly I don't think we should let the developer propose a percentage that we don't think is appropriate, so. Based on, so I think at very least we should provide some comments and.
Well, is there a motion?
Yeah,
Well, I can't phrase it.
Well, I would say, authorize the chair to submit comments, similar to the comments previously forwarded with regard to the payment in lieu proposal.
With the calculation, the formula.
Yeah.
We should,
the formula,
should
would
give
be- we're gonna make a recommendation on the formula, I think now. So you want to propose the formula then?
I would say 350% of the greater of the area median income or the state.
Because it's a proposal by us, no less than.
Yeah.
$350. So
Yeah.
that way, they wanna go higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure we take a bigger number.
I would second that.
And the 350 came out to what? We say just around 400?
400,000?
Yeah.
So no less than 350% of the greater of the area median income.
Yeah.
Or the,
Say,
or the
State.
or the area, or the state median income.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second, all in favor? Unanimous.
So you'll draft something and circulate it?
I'll just redo this. I'll put that language in. I'm happy to send it around.
Just send it around.
I think that's 416, 119 is the number we said the state. Yes, it's 416.
Okay.
Next item is just discussion of the plan itself, which is our regular discussion. So I'm not sure we have too many burning issues on any of the ones that we've worked through. This is a copy of the goals, just to refresh everybody's memory of the goals that are in the plan. One for Steve, and I'll take one here. So yeah, these are the goals in the 2022 affordable housing plan, sure. And I think we've said that most of the work that we've done since the plan was accepted have been number 1, number 3, number 7, and number 11, I think. I don't have this in front of me, sorry. Doing it from memory. So 1, 3, 7, and 11 are the ones that we primarily worked on. So, I mean, this might be a good time near the beginning of the year just to talk a little bit about what we hope to accomplish in 2024, where we'd like to be at this time next year when we have to give another report for the RTM. I think a couple of these we're likely to be continually working on. We're certainly going to be working on number 7. On a continued basis, the middle housing. We'll never, that's an existential sort of target for us. We're going to be working, I think, on number 3 on a continuing basis. This is the one with the housing authority. And we're going to, it looks as if number 1, it's something we're having a hard time shaking.
I think there'll be opportunities to work on 1 and 2 in the near term with Planning and Zoning Commission. Honestly,
Number 2,
yeah. I think there'll be, there's a development interest in a project, and staff have had conversations about revisiting the DRD overlay. Sometimes it's helpful for the commission to consider revisions to their regulations in the context of a development application, so they can see how it's applied. This would essentially be revisiting the density that used to be within the DRD overlay zone that allow for some of our condo developments to get built in town, which I think everyone would probably agree, at least today, that they seem to fit in okay within communities. But the ironic thing is today, most of those couldn't be built under our existing zoning because at some point, the zoning commission decided to tighten its regs. And by doing so, you can no longer achieve the level of density necessary to make these projects financially feasible. So we've been talking about this for a long time, staff have, in terms of going back to the prior regimen that would allow, it's a floating overlay zone, provided, a parcel meets certain base criteria that allows for development to occur at an appropriate density that would be financially feasible, but not so much that it would overwhelm the neighborhood. So it's kind of that middle ground. And in exchange for that, to have a inclusionary zoning regulation that would make sense for that DRD overlay. So I think it's likely that within the next year, we're going to see probably an application coming in. Now, I don't know if we're going to, we haven't seen the details of the application yet, so who knows, but that's the direction in which the staff have been pushing, which is, hey, this might be an opportunity to revisit this. If it's coming in at a level that density that's similar to some of the condo developments nearby, that might work. So just not that we have to do anything with it other than, at some point, I guess we would be weighing in with our thoughts on proposed regulation, but it could lend itself to that. And again, with the inclusionary requirement, just going through this exercise, looking at some of those communities that have payment in lieu options, many have as a threshold in which inclusionary zoning kicks in, it's 4 or 5 units. So, you know, we're clearly not out of the mainstream if we reduce that threshold from 10 to 5, because there are a number of communities that have done that. And, you know, in terms of the percentage, you know, they range anywhere from the 10% to 20%. Most are in the between, but some have targeted 60% AMI, which and Stanford actually has in their regulations that they're permanently restricted as part of the inclusionary requirement. So again, there's some stuff that we might be able to pick up from what other communities have done, provided that they're, yeah, everything looks good on paper. We have to make sure that they actually have been able to, that they work, but assuming that they do, you know, maybe could help inform our work in those areas as well.
So from a, not just ownership, but from a rental perspective, number 3, but FHA, is that in Crystal Housing? Kind of hit on that because that's generally what they're using.
Yeah, I think similar to Connecticut housing, I think, again, with the opportunity to have permanently affordable units within these developments, if we're gonna focus our time and resources, that'd be an area to, those would be groups to partner with, right?
And I know Steve is an active developer. When you're talking the reducing the 9 or whatever to 4 or 5, I mean, apparently there's like the types of designs being considered. Right, when I look at Bridgeport and I drive through, I mean, it seems to be like 4. Somewhere in like, you know, what they can squeeze into those lots or sort of what makes sense. Does that the 4 or 5 sort of they'd have to be playing games to avoid that, or I mean, I don't know. I mean, what's the, all right, look at the new stuff on Old Post. I think those are multiple in there, but those combined 2 and 2 connected or something like that. So it's like,
Yeah.
4, but they have multiples in there. I don't know. I just think given the way the market will, you know, find it's easy to pay.
Yeah.
If you're like, well, this is what the general design is, I mean, they could still do it, but it'd be kind of.
It's a little bit of whack-a-mole, but
No, well, you know, you look at like dividing up an existing structure into multiple things, I think it does. I'm all for reducing the number, but, and then my last question was on, oh, are you aware, and did we incorporate with what was the legislation that passed about?
ADUs or?
No, I create before that land trusts and making it easier, community land trusts, like, what was the state legislation?
I think they were, and I don't know if it passed, they were trying to allow, was this the housing authority bill? They were trying to allow housing authorities to operate in communities outside of their jurisdiction, or was that piece of legislation too?
You think in my household we would know that, but I guess I could. Go back.
Did that-
I
did
think I
that
get
go
my own
through?
answer
I
there.
don't remember if it went through or not. It didn't really affect us because we have a housing authority.
Yeah, I didn't think it did get through, but I remember it being on the table.
But actually, I think they're allowed without it. I think the Fairfield Housing Authority could,
Oh, if you don't have one, but someone else can't come in and build if we have one, can they?
I think.
I think they can.
I
They
think-
can now?
In fact, we talked, when we were BNT, I talked to the
Yeah.
for-profit developer, and they were
Mhm.
they're actively competing against housing authorities, or actually going in the housing authorities and just said, we can't do this. And she said they were going in and making proposals, sort of picking up the mantle or taking over developments that just were in bad need of. It was an interesting conversation, from economics, how they're making that work. But no, I'll look into that, because I'm, if we're gonna talk about maintaining affordable ownership for a longer period and do deed restriction stuff.
I think I've come, the reality for affordable home ownership outside of the town owning the underlying property, which is a kind of a land trust. It doesn't really work. I think that's where, you know, so I think, we have that with the owner-built housing, some of the, most of the housing actually in town is, affordable home ownership, deed restricted affordable home ownership. The town owns the underlying land, and so we're reworking Parkview Commons. So that's the, Parkview Commons, we sold fee title. Title to the, income eligible purchaser with covenants and restrictions in place. But, as we go back through it, we're gonna end up reacquiring the property, owning the land, and then leasing it, long-term.
Where's that?
It's the Navy housing site. Sorry, I had to do that with, the first selectman today. He goes, you keep referring to Parkview Commons. What are you talking about? It's the Navy housing site, yeah.
The Quincy Street Navy Housing and Parkview Commons
Yeah.
become synonyms for each other right here.
So, I think that's probably the best approach, to do a land trust, which is essentially what the town's doing.
And we did that at Greenfield, right?
Yeah, the owner built housing, that's set up as a condo. Is,
Yeah.
So 1 and 2, you're suggesting, Mark, would be a focus of our work. And certainly 7 on a continuing basis. And is there anything else we want to nail down on number 11? I know we had working. We had working guidelines that you thought might have been a little bit strict or.
no, I don't think that, I think we have working guidelines. I think it comes down to, there's 2 approaches. One, I'm actually talking to Mansfield. Mansfield has a housing trust fund. And they're just gonna, we have a pot of money, we're gonna RFP, give us your proposals. So we've talked about that here. And then in reviewing, again, the inclusionary zoning, we have other communities that say, hey, we're gonna use it for our own purposes because we want long-term affordability. We want to make sure, and not that you couldn't, when you RFP, you couldn't say, we want permanently affordable, we want this number, and let the market respond, let people respond. So I think the priorities that I see emerging here, in terms, we've used it for acquisition of land, which is a key consideration given the cost of land. And I think and then what we've done with that is then we've identified, put land together and then identify development partners that we can work with, typically nonprofits. For those, with the Housing Authority, Connecticut Housing Partners, Habitat, because offers long-term and more deeply targeted affordability. So that's the priorities I see emerging, but we haven't officially, this group has not officially taken that. This is our priority. And I haven't pushed us to do that because you never know when an opportunity may present itself. You may want to be able to respond to that.
So one of the things that we don't do well here is we don't market the Affordable Housing Committee or the trust fund. And we have an opportunity now, right? You guys,
Yeah.
you have the annual report.
Yep.
And we could do a press release with that report.
Well, we also talked about doing a presentation to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about the wider public.
No, actually, yes, but we also talked about going more public in terms of having like a seminar
Mhm.
and to push the housing trust fund.
I just think the best opportunity to do that, to tell that story, is when you actually have a project and you can say, look what we did with the housing trust fund. So we did a little bit with the
Well, wait a
Greenfield,
second.
so it'd be nice to have it done,
We
right?
got the annual report, we could do the press release, and then we could mention in the press release that we do have the trust fund. We're accepting donations, by the way, and we've got a pot of money. If you have any ideas, give Mark a call. You know?
Oh, I've got calls. Yeah, I just have to, again, if we don't have that much money.
600 and some thousand.
Sure, that's not a lot of money. And I have people that will come up with all kinds of ideas as to how we can spend that money. And maybe that gives us some affordability. You know, I have a developer that I've been working with, an investor, who his process is to buy existing single, 2-family and 3-family units in town, rehab them, and put in Section 8 tenants, which is good. You know, so I have helped him provide, you know, the town has provided funding assistance for that, both acquisition and rehab dollars. And generally the subsidy is anywhere between $25,000 and $35,000 per unit, which is cheap. And we get and it's structured as a declining balance loan, so it's restricted for 40 years. Every year, 1/40th of it comes off, and at the end of 40 years, he doesn't know it converts to a full grant. So it's a nice project, nice program. We've created 10 or 11 units in town through that. So that's awesome. And he read the article about the housing trust fund. He says, well, can I use that? And I was like, well, yes, but you know, you come up with projects and we'll worry about where the money comes from. So right now we're funding it out of community development block grant dollars. Yeah, and so that's fine. The issue that I have, I don't know that those, first of all, it's restricted for 40 years. He can opt out of it at any time. He just pays off the balance, right? So it's not, it's a declining balance loan. So in year 10, let's say, because no one's going to do an absolute for $80,000. I'm funding a 2-family for, let's say, $60,000 or $80,000. He's going to say an absolute guaranteed 40-year restriction on that for that kind of investment. No. So it's structured, again, we have the benefit. If it stays true for 40 years, we're good. But in let's say year 10, if he sells, because he's an elderly guy, the successor can opt out and they just pay us 3/4 of what was owed. So for the 10 years, it worked very well. Now, how will the state view that? Will they view that as a 40-year restriction that would give us housing unit equivalency points? I suspect not, knowing how the state counts those things. I'm willing to try, but I'm guessing that the state will not consider that. So is that 40,000 or 80, let's say we invested 100,000. Is that $100,000 investment for something like that more valuable than a $100,000 investment to something where Carol's going to buy a unit and deed restrict it permanently and make it affordable for somebody at 50% AMI? I think our money would be better spent with Carol or Housing Partners or one of those than with.
But this other guy, you get more bang for the buck and you're not increasing density. You're not affecting the neighborhood. Carol's projects, 100,000 is just a drop in the bucket. And it's.
Carol has a project right now. If we can come up with $1 million that we need to buy the house, it's a 4-unit. She doesn't need to do anything. It's an existing 4-family that provide rental housing. It's going to cost us between $1 million and $1.5 million. It's in Southport.
I think what Steve's saying is you can cover a lot more units at giving, this developer you're referring to, giving him $40,000 or $50,000 a year.
Yes, but I don't,
Well, they're not permanently
what is the
restricted. That's
objective?
the issue.
That's what,
Yeah,
is the objective to get points towards a moratorium? Is it, the objective is to have, because we have had a program that provides rehab dollars.
Broader range of housing options and.
I think the answer is both. I think the answer is both. And
This is why we need to have this
and
conversation.
part of it is knowing where we are on the moratorium path.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't,
And-
yeah. that's what
and if
helped
we're
me, 'cause
comfortable-
I also don't know the formula. It sounds like just the Section 8 you get some points, right? Just straight up. But if you deed restrict it, then you get. more
You have,
points.
in order for it to count towards your moratorium, it has to be deed restricted for a minimum period of 40 years.
Oh, so the fact that you got Section 8 units here.
Doesn't matter. Counts towards one level of affordability, but doesn't count towards housing unit equivalency points towards a moratorium. This is where you get into this catch-22 with the state. So the state, you have some affordable units are worth more than others. That's the crazy
I didn't
thing.
realize that. I thought maybe it was like you only got a partial. I didn't realize, okay, it's like, I didn't realize it was binary.
So we've got two goals, right? We've got with a moratorium and we want to develop units and more housing options for people. So we need to keep our eye on two balls. So
This is why, you know, I haven't pushed you guys to develop a strict standard, because ultimately, let's say I don't have community development block grant dollars and he has a really good project. Would I come to you? Absolutely, I would come to you. But until I exhaust my CDBG dollars, why would I want to? Your dollars are more flexible. You can invest in these other things that might have a higher, in my view, bang for the
What
buck.
was the irrigation project where identifying, you know, blight, like their properties are identified and presenting that, you know, sort of a package proposal in joint with the town? I mean, that would be a great story, I would think. And would be very focused, like, this is what we're trying to do. We may add to it, but here's starting. I don't know.
What we haven't figured out really is how to identify opportunities in here that are actionable, that don't require the town to act as the purchaser of the, because the town is not a nimble creature. You know, every time the town acquires property, leases property, sells property, it involves 3 or 4 boards. Not that, you know, I've done it, but you got to go through that. And, you know, if you're competing on the open market to acquire property, and it takes you 90 days to move on something, it's not going to happen. It's not going to be there if it's a good opportunity. The only ones that will probably come our way are ones that have so many warts on it that probably no one else wants to take a run at it.
Well, I would like to know what that process is in 3 or 4 boards and also, and just go find out.
I can tell you what it is.
No,
It's
I don't-
Board of Selectmen, Planning and Zoning for 824 and RTM. Every time we acquire, sell, lease property, those are the 3 boards I need to go to. I may have to go to Board of Finance if it involves an appropriation, but so far we've been able to avoid that step.
And the town attorney, right?
Well, the town attorney gets involved in all those things for sure. But the thing is, you know, even if we run that gauntlet pretty quickly, it's 60 days, sometimes 90. So again, if it's an opportunity that's out there, like this guy that I've been working with, he loses properties and he's on them like right away, and there's multiple bids on it, and he's overpaying. In my view, he's way overpaying for these properties, but that's what the market is right now, especially for 2 and 3 family units there in town. It's ridiculous. I think, you know, one of the opportunities this group has talked about in that 2 to 4 family range is, and we did that analysis, we had an intern do that analysis, looking at our residence B and C zones. You know, a lot of the existing 2-family homes that are residence B zone are on non-conforming lots. And they don't seem to bother anyone. So they're on a lot that's too small. They couldn't be built under our current zoning regulations. So the one thought is, should we provide an opportunity for people to develop 2 families on substandard lots that are too small, they don't have the right lot square on it, if at least 50% or maybe all the units are affordable. And that way you might be able to create an opportunity where somebody's acquiring the property, maybe they're overpaying, but they can make the numbers work if it's a 2-family, where before it was only allowed for a 1-family. So, you know, those might be opportunities where we can create that missing middle, but we're going to need zoning to come along with this. So I think one of the things we should be looking at is trying to set up that planning discussion with either staff or hopefully the full commission, where we can have a discussion informally about some of these ideas.
I know you're trying to set it up, Mark, but as soon as you can get it going.
Keep pushing.
Yeah.
Keep pushing. I mean, I think the Planning and Zoning Commission right now is preoccupied with trying to finalize the plan of conservation development. So, and well, they should be. So I think until that, hopefully that'll be finalized soon, and then we can keep on to other.
And while we're talking, we've got our orientation meeting that we're trying to make happen, right?
Yeah, thank you all for responding. I think the date that seems to work best for most everyone is the 9th of March. I think, Brian, you're the only one said, you didn't say that was bad, but you didn't say it was good either, so. That's the date that everyone said yes. And I had Brian as a maybe. So we'll work on putting that together. That works.
Great. And while we're talking about this, you ask us to submit ideas, topics.
Yeah, maybe this is where we can talk about those things more specifically. Those particular changes in the regs that we're looking, or
Yeah, I think
the
that'd be-
topics for our joint planning meeting. Maybe even have, even throw that out and see if any of them would be interested in joining us.
So we talked about, just getting back to the wrapping this item up, we talked about number 1, number 2, number 3 will continue, and we probably are going to have another discussion with Carol before long. I think it was March of last year that we had our last full committee discussion with Carol Martin on the Housing Authority. And while I know you bump into her all the time, and some of the others of us do, Mark, it's probably good for the committee to have the benefit of that discussion. And so 1, 2, 3, certainly 7. 11, we've talked about 11. Is there anything else that we want? I feel like we need to,
Well, I think we
This year.
can't focus on too many things, because then we won't get anything done.
right, no, to that end, number 8. And this came from Glenn Cholder, I think initially, and this was that Mark needs help. Basically, and Mark will add to that. I now have 2 new committees that I have to provide support to, right? We have two new.
Yeah, I've doubled my
Oh, boy.
Which committee?
staff, provide staff support to the Arts Commission and to the Fair Rent Commission.
Wow.
Hmm.
Plus,
Yes.
Now, although I'm hoping that the Fair Rent Commission will actually be the town attorney's baby, because you know, they get into hearings and such, so it'd be good to have legal advice, somebody that practices law as opposed to me.
So we probably don't need to do too much on number 8, other than just.
I will have, I'm actually having a meeting with the first selectman on Friday to talk about that.
Great, terrific. Okay, so we'll try to pull some thoughts together here for the minutes for Gretchen's benefit. And we can memorialize our discussion here.
Yeah.
Should we talk about inclusionary zoning a bit more first? I mean, you floated the idea with the planning department about the 5-unit minimum.
Yeah.
And you don't anticipate necessarily long-term resistance, but maybe it's just.
I think it's a
initial-
pretty easy concept to explain, and now looking at what other communities nearby are doing, I feel like we're very
Okay,
well supported by the data, so.
so this is something that we'll.
I think there's some commission members that probably are a little bit, you know, disappointed perhaps that some of these developments came in at 9 units or 9 lot subdivisions. So I think that's probably in their heads. It's kind of like when we had the Stonebridge situation, we can't let that happen again. We gotta at least have some affordable units as part of these developments. So I think there is an appetite probably to revisit that. So that's something that we can easily pull together and put before the commission fairly quickly.
Great. We'll certainly get into discussion with them on that topic when we meet, whatever that date is.
Herb, can I just ask a question? The fee in lieu, Rizzio is gonna be in front of planning and zoning when?
Probably in March.
Or so you'll let us know in advance so
Yeah.
that we can.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it was on the January 23rd meeting to refer to a public hearing, but there's a couple things in front of them.
And then as far as the informal committees that we have had working, so Bob's on parking, the one on properties in distress. Steve, I think you and Brian had some discussion about working on deed restriction, thought.
I don't recall that. but-
I thought Brian mentioned that to me, but.
I mean, going beyond 40 years?
No, getting more of our housing stock. You know. Permanently restricted and or longer term deed restriction, no?
Our current housing stock?
Yeah. Okay, well, I withdraw that.
And I'm trying to think, what housing stock do we have that we might be able to do that with? I don't think we had any. You've talked to Operation Hope already, right? So there,
No, it would be a forward thing. I mentioned it, the interest, an interest to me. It should go, in my opinion, hand in hand with the housing trust fund.
Yeah.
And it just gives,
I agree.
if you have it,
Mhm.
then people don't look at you quizzically when you, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we broached it, explain what it is, 'cause some folks don't know what that is. It could streamline things.
yeah. So the land trust, like the land under Greenfield or maybe housing, would that go into the land trust?
To me, that's a land trust, because the
Yeah.
town owns the property, we're ground leasing it for the purpose of affordable housing. It's not, it's not like, some communities have land trusts, like 501c3, or organizations around that, so.
And I think there was state legislation too, that somehow there might be some state restrictions. I think they made some difference. I'll look into that, and like I said, I'm on another nonprofit board that's all we focus on is the continuum of housing from.
I mean, if there were an independent organization that would be mission driven to create affordable housing outside of the town structure, if you will. Like you have like open space land trust, right? That are not part of the town. So if you had something like that as a nonprofit that you could partner with, that would help. If you could empower them, they would be able to acquire property maybe more nimbly than town could potentially. But I'm not suggesting that we need to go that way, because the way I'm viewing the town as the land trust. But I don't know enough about it, so maybe Brian pulls that together.
Yeah, I mean, I could look into what Litchfield, I mean, there's some that they definitely have it. That's what I think I mentioned. I mean, I could, and I did ask for about what. This bunch of data about what else is going on in Connecticut. See what best practices are. Yeah, I can do that. Put that on my to-do list.
Okay. Anything else on this topic before we move on? Guess we go to old business then, or continue on old business to the to our regular trades.
Yeah, so we are closing in on having the points necessary to file that first moratorium applications. Probably in the May, June timeframe, I would think. I've talked to the 3 projects, they're in construction. 528 Black Rock Turnpike is and 26 Beacon Square are both about ready to or have launched pre-leasing opportunities. So I just posted 528 Black Rock Turnpike to our website. And notices it went out, so they're accepting applications. Beacon Square is right behind them, and 5545 Park Avenue is expecting a CO sometime April, May timeframe. So all three of those projects will contribute more than enough points, put us over the top. We, on my to-do list, I have, we have a number of projects that we've assisted Operation Hope over the years. They have, I think, 22 permanent supportive housing units scattered throughout town, all of which have been authorized to receive a tax abatement from the town to help them provide affordable housing. And what I noticed when this has been an issue for me for 5 years. There's no fully executed. It was authorized by the Board of Selectmen, but no agreement was ever executed. And so I've been working with folks for going on 5 years to get agreements in place along with the restrictive covenants that I would need to document compliance and provide points to our moratorium application. So I'm finally almost there. Attorney Phil Pierce has been great to work with, his entire team, and we have draft agreements that I've presented to Carla, Operation Hope. She's reviewed, just trying to verify a few things yet, and then we'll put it back on the Board of Selectmen to confirm their intent, and then we'll execute the documents, record on land records, and that'll go into our application as well. So
Mark, they're on our list here.
they are on that list. You'll note that there's a point gap. So they're restricted at 80%. They really should be restricted at 40% AMI based on the population they serve.
Mhm.
So again, that fixes up 2.5 points per unit.
Yeah.
Versus 1.5 points. So it's meaningful.
Mhm.
And more importantly, we just need the documentation because that's what the state will review. So the other really great thing is we're keeping track of, we already have a development pipeline that we track progress. But I've already put in place moratorium number 2, so we already have equal points necessary. If everything gets built the way we think it is within that time period, we're well on our way to the moratorium number 2. So we really might be able to keep this thing going. And, I know the committee is thinking about how do we do this strategically when we're thinking about how we're maximizing those opportunities. And so that's what we've got in place.
You're saying that we're gonna get our first moratorium, say June, and
Well, we're applying.
we're applying, all
Yeah.
right, but then we have almost enough points for the second moratorium.
Yeah.
So-
Not based on stuff actually completed. It's stuff
Yeah.
that is realistically attainable
But
within
they're
the
not
next
on
4 or
this
5
list.
years. They're on that list. But, we've also, I'm basing this on what is the likelihood that these will get built within the next 5 years. So not everything on that list is on the second moratorium, because we know certain projects are moving ahead. They're
Yeah.
moving and pulling building permits. Like, for example, 81 Black Rock Turnpike, assuming it does get approved, will be pulling a building permit. I'm pretty sure of that. 92 Bronson Road is actually, they have a building permit application pending. That's the one that's been long in litigation. So there are a number of projects that likely will be under construction that we can reasonably count towards moratorium number 2.
So when Herb and I talked about the second moratorium, we had a concern that we've got a lot of points for the first moratorium, and we have 19 830Gs
Mhm.
that contribute to that. And we won't have any 830Gs during the first moratorium, so they cannot contribute to the second. And you've got other considered low hanging fruit. You've got Operation Hope and some other stuff on here that I'm just surprised that we're that close to a second moratorium, because those next points, we're gonna need another 400 points or something like that, right?
Actually lower threshold, the second
Yeah.
for towns our size.
Good.
So.
Yeah.
But again, this would be a good, we can go through all that on March 9th. That'd be a good topic.
That'd be great to do
Lay
that.
it out and then you guys can pick it apart
Yeah.
and say, I don't think that's realistic and, you know.
So
But,
has,
you know, things like Greenfield Street, for example, Habitat. That won't be done this year, but it'll be done for the next one. I know it's not a lot, but you're talking about the small projects, Parkview Commons, again, we're moving ahead with that. While the existing units, the 5 units we're gonna turn those 5 into hopefully 14. So those additional 9 units will be part of the moratorium number 2.
do you know any community that's gotten 2 moratoriums?
Yes.
Yeah.
What's gonna be different about Fairfield is gonna be by far the largest municipality to ever qualify for a moratorium on its merits.
Yeah.
Milford received a moratorium, but that was through,
Chicanery.
yeah. You said it, not me. It was led through the legislative process, yeah. But
We'll believe that.
Fairfield's is a 62,000, 22,000 housing units. Every other community that's gotten a moratorium has been much smaller. And there are some that have gotten 2, so it's not unworkable, but I think your point in terms of the 830G contribution would probably be more towards beyond number 2. I think that, and that's why, you know, opportunities working with somebody like Connecticut Housing Partners or the Housing Authority would be a good strategy, because they, you know, the Pine Tree is on its own would be, you know, 90 points. Because, and it's 50 units, but it points well because all the units are affordable, you know, so. So I think that's, if that's our focus, and again, I'm not suggesting that's the be all end all, but it's been kind of the white whale for all this for a long time, so. It'd be nice to get the moratorium number 1 through, and then, you know, we have a little bit of breathing room to think about what else we're gonna do.
Absolutely.
So other than, you know, we have, besides the 3 that I mentioned, 110 Woodrow is a small set aside development at the end of exit 19 in Southport. It was proposed at 23. There's been discussions with the neighborhood group, and apparently coming back with 20-unit development that has their support, or at least not opposition. That's my understanding. And then I think that is it for, well, there's Berkeley Road is in litigation. 15 Uncas in litigation. 130 Beach Road is in litigation. All those probably could be settled or adjudicated in one fashion or another next year or so.
Woodrow is up for public hearing on Tuesday, I think.
Yeah, they continued the public hearing. And so that hopefully will be completed Tuesday.
I went by the site a few days ago, and it's a small piece of property.
Small piece of property. Very small. The Housing Trust Fund has a current balance of $957,478 minus the reserve for additional acquisition within the Navy housing development of 319. We have an uncommitted balance of $638,478 as of end of January. the Navy housing site, we do. Our current plan, we've met with Habitat and they've provided a revised site plan. Focused on all duplexes. But we're looking to do a cluster development on 3 of the lots that are side by side. So we're planning to do hopefully 4 duplexes within those 3 lots. And then 2 duplexes across the street.
The 4 duplexes, would they have a shared center area?
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm. So the next step would be to present that development agreement to the Board of Selectmen. And the only thing that's holding us up is the court hasn't yet approved our purchase of 376 Quincy. And that's one of the 5 lots that's part of the development agreement, so we're waiting for that to close. And then that'll go before the board for their approval, and ultimately we would do a ground lease, which will have to go back through the board and RTM for approval. Greenfield Street is moving along. There's been some conversation amongst staff about organizing some volunteer group to go over and help build. I don't know if members of there was some conversation about, hey, maybe it would be fun to have the Affordable Housing Committee and Planning and Zoning Commission help build units. So if you're interested in swinging a hammer at some point, let me know. And 0 Street, I do have a call into the diocese to determine where things stand. They had a purchase, was under contract for a bit to a private developer. And I talked to the developer and long story short, I think the developer decided this wasn't the right opportunity for them. And so I'm still hopeful that we might find, this might be even a good opportunity for these guys. There is some, if you're familiar with the site, it's where St. Emery's, the school is, and it goes up the hill. So you have some grade to play with. Carol's proposal was, I think, 22 units, which is kind of traditional townhome style. I think that would be fine. I don't know if you could, do more than that and still work within, because you, again, working into a cliff. So it kind of suggests that you might be able to do something a little bit denser there and not overwhelm it, but it's a neighborhood that already has had a lot of applications for housing, so I'm sensitive to that as well. But I do think the right design would if we have to figure out what the design would work for the site. So the problem with Carol's, the church wants, $2 million for the property, which is like an acre. And, 22 units per acquisition cost $2 million, it just doesn't work. I mean, you can make it work with a lot of subsidy, but it's more than what you should pay per unit for land. So, I don't know if we can talk the church down from its $2 million that they're looking for, or figure out something that work in terms of density for the site. But a private development, the problem that I had with a private development is, we're talking probably 70 to 100 units, which would be extremely dense and, not something I think, even with the best design, that the neighborhood would be very happy with. So, but that's what you play with, because what you have to pay for dirt kind of informs how many units. So when when they tell me, like the church says, we have a contract for $2.1 million. And I was like, well, you know, then you're telling me it's a 75+ unit 830G application. Oh, no, it's not. Absolutely it is. I'm telling you right now it is. So of course, I met with the developer and that's, you know, we're thinking 90 units. So, well, you know. So that's the rub. And could you make it work? But when, you know, the state doesn't want to overpay for property either. That's always what we run into with the state, because they run it through their rubric, and oh, I can buy dirt in Bridgeport at, you know, $20,000 per unit. Why would I pay $60,000 per unit in Fairfield?
Did you want to?
Because you want to develop in Fairfield, because, you know, so that's part of the issue that we have to deal with the state. You know, you can't have it both ways. If you want to develop in high opportunity communities like Fairfield, you're gonna have to pay what the market value of the land is. And it's different than it is in Naugatuck, you know, so it's we're still working on St. Emery's. But the thing there's a lot of assets controlled both by dioceses as well as the Episcopal Church and other religious institutions that, you know, might be opportunities to create some affordable housing if we can come up with numbers that make sense.
Have we had any meeting with have you met with the head of real estate for the diocese?
I have.
Talk about not just this property, but the big picture.
Yes, I have a call into her now.
So that meeting's to be
interested in
be
lease,
held, right?
any kind of lease structure.
Yeah, I think, you know, that's something that I was talking to the guy who's doing some real estate advising for the Episcopal Church. And, you know, part of it is they want cash flow, right? So we could structure it as a lease, you know, we could do it as a lease.
Charities, I mean, and they also have like a stated goal area. They're doing it through the whole diocese. They have like two housing types, not too much work. That's the walk you want to walk. You know, and look, if we can structure where they get, you get cash flow. I mean,
I get it, they need money, everyone, you know, my church is constantly looking under seat cushions for dollars, so I get it.
But once they sell it to the point.
But, you know, at the same time, these are faith-based communities. You should be focused on the broader social mission, which is how do we solve some of, you know, societal issues here.
And I see municipalities where they sell away property that was affordable at one point, you know, name names, not too far from here. And I go, you guys did the math, because once you sell that asset where it's located, you never get it back. I mean, yeah, you got some one-time money, but you could have structured a lease on that, and you would have had affordable for a long time, gotten the credit for it, and you have a cash through. I was like, I doubt present value in the cash flows. $2 million is a lot of money. I think over the longer term, they could lease.
Yeah, it's partly, let's talk about how we can help each other, you know. If I understand what your goals are, we can structure a deal that hopefully satisfies your goals, but the town's as well, so. That's all the old business. We do have a couple of applications, the 250 Pequot will be coming up, 60 Katona Drive, which is an office conversion, which is I think it's a great project. Yeah, it's right next to McDonald's, yeah.
Which one is that? I'm sorry.
Katona.
60 Katona, and then 81 Black Rock Turnpike, they closed the public hearing. We'll be deciding that issue. And, you know, the Board of Selectmen did authorize my office to retain real estate advisory company to assist in evaluating a tax abatement, a proposed partial tax abatement in exchange for a private development like 81 Black Rock Turnpike going above and beyond what they're required to provide. So what we've talked about is, hey, how can we increase the affordable percentage from 12 to something like 20, and maybe get some of those units at or below 60%, which would not only create better housing opportunities, but also, increase the point value of that development. And if it means that instead of getting $7,000 per unit in taxes, we get $6,500 per unit in taxes, that seems like a pretty good deal to me. We should look at those things. Because those are things that the town has some ability to control and shape, So that's where we're at.
Excellent. Any new business that we want to bring up?
Just FYI, I had looked at the listings, multiple listing service. And in January, there were 32 houses sold. The high was 2.4 million, the low was 325,000, and the median was 805,000. That's what was sold in January. The properties listed today for sale, there's 58. The high is 12 million, the low is 440,000, and the median is 1,589,000. So we are becoming New Canaan and Darien very quickly.
You told me about the one on your street.
Yeah, I live on Adley Road, which was built after the World War II, a lot of small capes and ranches, and they're turning over 2 or 3, 4 a year. And across the street from me, one sold for 400,000, being rebuilt as we speak, and the list price is $1.6 million. And this is not Greenfield Hill, this is Adley. So
What's like weekend, it's beautiful.
everything just going.
I mean, that was a great selling point. We're at leader.
1.6.
So if we have no other new business, then we can probably take a motion for adjournment.
So
But
Second.
I didn't know if our guest wanted to
say hi.
announce yourself.
Oh, I'm Katrina Cash. I reside at 130 Fairchild, and I'm on the Board of Human Services. So
Oh, great.
decided I would come and sit in on the meeting.
So the Human Services Commission?
Yes,
Wonderful, terrific.
Well, thank you for attending.
so I'm at 130 Fairchild, which was one of those projects.
Yeah, one of the garden homes,
Yeah.
54 units.
I get concerned sometimes with the builders, like because they build and then they don't take care of the property.
Yeah.
I'm constantly talking about the maintenance.
Well, please come back and join us in future meetings whenever it works for your schedule. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we have a second. Do we have a second to adjournment?
Second.
Okay, second to adjournment. We're all in favor, I think, so. Good night. Our next meeting then will be on March.
Second.
Second Wednesday, March 2nd.